How's it going, everyone? I'm back again, and today I'm talking about another Indian horror Netflix miniseries. This one from 2020 called Betaal. Like Ghoul from 2018, which I reviewed yesterday, this was written and directed by Patrick Graham. And also, just like Ghoul, it's a collaboration between Hindi producers and Blumhouse. Honestly, I enjoyed Ghoul so much that I got the ball rolling on this one last night. And I'm happy to say I enjoyed this one too. Maybe not quite as much as Ghoul. It wasn't quite as tight. It was just a little bit more convoluted in places. But I still thought it was a really solid piece of horror entertainment. It seems like it got a lot of really trashy reviews when it first came out back in 2020. Most of them, from what I could tell, just glancing at Rotten Tomatoes, were from Indian critics, which I suppose makes sense. But I just didn't see a lot in the way of North American consensus on this, at least not officially and critically. But in any case, despite the fact that it sits at an 8% on Rotten Tomatoes, the user score is 72%. And that's leaning a little bit closer to where I fall on this. I could give it, if I was going to go on percentages, this would be like 79, leaning towards an 80%, something like that. I'm not going to say it's the best zombie series I've ever seen because it's certainly not, but it's still really solid, and it's certainly not 8% on Rotten Tomatoes levels of badness here, not even close. I actually thought this was, for the most part, very involving, engrossing, quite suspenseful in places, and just like Ghoul, it was distinctly character-driven, and I really appreciated that. In fact, and this isn't really a criticism on the movie, but the zombies here, for the most part, which are the basic horror element that they start with, they don't get too directly involved in the story most of the time. Which obviously isn't to say that they have no influence whatsoever on the progress of the story, but it's just that here the zombies are the constant. The human element is the variable. Because there's only so many variations on zombies themselves that you can actually do, I think that was a smart choice. The lead protagonist in particular has a very intriguing and compelling backstory that is very carefully nurtured from one end of the miniseries to the other. And it's still being revealed in its entirety and dealt with in the present in the closing segments of the last episode. I personally thought that character's final fate felt very appropriate given the whole story that had been assembled for him. And I always appreciate it when filmmakers allow the only thing that could morally and logically happen to a person in given circumstances actually happen to them. Without spoiling anything, I'll just say that there is the possibility of redemption for this character, but there isn't exactly a trap door to escape the past either. Speaking of escaping the past, one thing that I did enjoy, even if it is a little bit goofy, but I mean, come on, we're talking about zombies here, everything is a bit goofy. Having the zombie mass, in this case, be what is almost essentially, a zombie version of Pirates of the Caribbean was kind of a fun touch. I mean, they're not pirates, but what they are is old colonial English army redcoats who are trapped and forced to lurch around in zombie form for eternity because their colonel had a penchant for black magic and through a series of unfortunate events got them all stuck in this warp. I won't say more about it than that, and there isn't even really that much to spoil there. It's essentially a cosmetic detail in terms of the amount of difference that it really makes. It's okay, it's just different enough to have a little bit of its own flavor, Again, it's not about the meat, it's the seasoning that makes the difference. Throughout all 4 episodes, I personally found the set design and cinematography to be top-notch. Even in sequences where it's a little bit more evident that they were probably working on a sound stage or in a studio, Patrick Graham still finds ways to use a lot of deep darkness contrasted with lighter ethereal images to make things feel cinematic. It never felt distracting or tacky to me. Kind of like Ghoul, it ends on a note that suggests that there should be another season coming, but it looks like that didn't happen. This is almost 4 years old now. While I wouldn't say there's necessarily any major threads left dangling at the end of the 4th episode, it does end off on a note that does make things feel incomplete, just kind of ending there. Too bad, because I honestly do think that what Patrick Graham, the Hindi production team, Blumhouse, and Netflix, are all creating here is honestly pretty good stuff. Not necessarily startlingly original, but solid, dependable, efficient horror entertainment. And if you're a horror fan who feels like you've exhausted a lot of your domestic options, I don't hesitate to recommend you check Betaal out. And that's all I have for this one. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Look for more content coming your way really soon. Take care.